My name is Nicky Mardes. I'm the Executive Director of Global Canopy, an international non-profit that targets the market forces destroying nature. Here, we're concentrating on tropical forests, and particularly on shifting global financial flows to help halt and reverse tropical deforestation. Today, it's a staggeringly one-sided story, with up to $10 trillion in private finance and agricultural subsidies overwhelming global efforts to protect forests. This isn't a fair fight. Every 6 seconds, we send a football field of forest up in smoke. Every 6 seconds. Last year alone, the world lost an area of forest the size of Belgium. This puts vast amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from deforestation. If it were a country, deforestation would be the third biggest emitter, behind only China and the US. It's a crazy situation. It also means that vital net zero targets will be out of reach unless deforestation is halted and reversed this decade. And it's not just me saying that. Those are also the words of Mark Carney, Michael Bloomberg, and Mary Shapiro, the leadership of the Glasgow Financial Alliance on Net Zero, known as GFANZ, a group of financial institutions that account for a colossal $150 trillion in assets. Most are yet to take any action on eliminating deforestation from their portfolios. Forests are mighty engines of life, home to a mind-blowing diversity of plants and animals, the result of billions of years of evolution. A single hectare of Amazon rainforest can hold more tree species than the whole of Europe. Forests take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and help cool our warming planet. Forests deliver reliable rainfall across whole regions. Forests are vast stores of fresh water and hold huge, undiscovered libraries of foods, fibers, and medicines. These forests also support the livelihoods of nearly 2 billion people worldwide. They've been home to indigenous peoples for thousands of generations. They remain their best guardians to this day, but face violence and rights abuses as forests continue to fall. Forests matter more than words can say for all of us, yet we all continue to drive their destruction, whether we realize it or not. A recent landmark study showed that more than 90% of tropical deforestation is driven by agricultural expansion. In the main, this is for a handful of globally traded commodities like beef, soy, and palm oil. These end up in over 50% of the products in our supermarkets. So whenever we buy groceries or put money into our pensions, we are contributing to the problem. We're all part of a global deforestation economy. Yet the private sector continues to ignore or do too little to address these hidden harms in their supply chains and investments. Our Forest 500 rankings annually assess the performance of the 350 companies and the 150 financial institutions with the greatest links to deforestation worldwide. And 1/3 of the companies and 2/3 of the investors don't even have basic policies in place to recognize and start addressing the problem. But as major consumer governments now tighten regulations on imported deforestation and more private sector disclosure requirements on climate and nature come into play, the risks for business are growing. Those that are too slow to act will be left behind. So change must come. In their recent statement, Carney, Bloomberg and Shapiro were unequivocal. To maintain a safely habitable planet, deforestation must end this decade. Throughout this session, we will highlight the work, the solutions and the guidance that is already out there that can help drive the change we need. But let me end by spelling out the vital action we need to see on market-driven deforestation. Firstly, from governments. Voluntary action by companies and investors will never be enough on its own. As long as forests are worth more dead than alive, this problem will continue. Governments need to take action. New due diligence laws on deforestation coming into major importing markets like the EU and the UK could be transformative. More governments should now follow their lead. From companies and investors, deforestation is a risk to your business, so recognize it as one. Develop a strong policy, actively engage your suppliers and those you finance, and report transparently on progress. It's not rocket science, and there is freely available guidance, better data than ever, and a growing community of practice with over a decade of hands-on experience in eliminating deforestation from supply chains and finance. And last but not least, from each one of us, we should all be asking our banks, our pension funds, to assure us that our money is not driving deforestation. It's a simple question, but a powerful one. Ask the same of your supermarket and let the politicians that represent you know that you expect them to act on promises that almost every world leader made at COP26 to help end deforestation by 2030. The alternative doesn't bear thinking about.
Babes?
Yeah?
There's a delivery for you.
Okay. Hiya.
Are you Amber Khan?
Yeah.
I've got this delivery here for you.
Sorry.
What the heck?
What's that?
It's a Deforester 5000.
And
Yeah, no, I
What?
haven't ordered that.
What is this for?
Yeah, yeah.
Why are you lowering it?
Yeah,
Can
why,
you just
why
stop?
is that going down?
Do you want to check the address? It says Amber Khan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
I'm
could-
Amber
that's
Khan,
like
but...
a misprint or
there's-
something.
I
That's
don't
not
even
us.
know what that is.
I'm not really sure. All I know is from pension funds.
What are these?
Pension funds.
What are these?
This is also part of your order.
Chainsaws? For what?
So there should be 12 chainsaws that you ordered as well.
Yeah, my pension's not bringing me
I
chainsaws.
completely-
completely
take those back.
understand, but I haven't got the time. I have got other deliveries, okay? Thank you very much.
This is ridiculous.
I
And
don't
he's still bringing over stuff. Like, look. What are we going to do? What did you order?
I didn't order this. I don't know. Why have we got chainsaws?
Why is it from your pension? Like, what the Why?
This is a session about solutions. What practical steps can we take to shift finance away from deforestation? The first solution starts with people. In March, the IPCC recognized that indigenous and local knowledge are essential in tackling climate change. In the Amazon, there is 50% less deforestation on indigenous lands. We have to listen to the people who for hundreds of generations have been the best guardians of the forest. Yet currently a third of companies assessed by the Forest 500 do not have human rights commitments for the commodities they're assessed for. And as the private sector turns a blind eye, guardians of the forest are increasingly under attack. A year ago, at COP26 in Glasgow, we hosted an event, Amazon Voices Raising the Roof. It was a night of unforgettable messages from Indigenous leadership. Please take your seats, we're about to begin. Welcome to Amazon Voices Raising the Roof. We're coming to you live from the New York Times Climate Hub to transport us from all around the world into the heart of the forest.
Esse foi convite para a sociedade pensar. Eu sou das guerreiras da ancestralidade. Eu sou Célia Chacriabá. Somos povo de sabedoria milenar, vozes fortes às vezes serenas. Denunciamos o genocídio indígena através do DJ Eric Terena.
Eu tenho muita esperança que o futuro seja ancestral. O futuro do mundo está no respeito aos modos de vida dos povos indígenas.
The leadership is among us tonight. The leadership is among indigenous people. They are the real heroes of the forest.
Nós, povos indígenas, somos os legítimos porta-vozes da Mãe Terra.
Que vocês ainda não entenderam. Eu não gostaria de estar aqui. Eu queria estar com os meus filhos. Eu queria estar na minha aldeia, com o meu povo, comendo a nossa alimentação. Mas estou aqui, como as outras lideranças, como as outras mulheres e guerreiros, para dizer para vocês o que mais precisamos dizer.
13% of the Amazon forest has been deforested. But this doesn't need to be the future.
Together, we do have collective power. Those on the front lines who are putting their lives on the line have our collective action and partnership.
Nós estamos aqui para dizer que é chegada a hora da retomada.
No COP26, nossa luta, mas a nossa luta vai continuar.
Reflorestar as mentes da humanidade. Somente a consciência dos humanos vai salvar a Mãe Terra.
Só existe floresta em pé porque tem povos defendendo, cuidando, zelando e protegendo com as suas próprias vidas.
Isso é uma guerra. E a luta pela Mãe Terra é a mãe de todas as lutas.
Solution 1. Ensure indigenous and local communities are seen as partners, because when they're excluded from decision making, climate mitigation and adaptation measures will fail. Following the result of the presidential election in Brazil, there's hope that things can change for the better in that country, but we still need action from the private sector worldwide. Solution 2 is about data, ensuring that deforestation is not hidden by complex supply chains. TRACE, our project with the Stockholm Environment Institute, offers an innovative, open solution to this problem. It maps the trade and financing of forest risk commodities in new ways. Andre Vasconcelos is the global engagement lead at TRACE.
A recent study published at Science estimates that agriculture expansion is the force behind between 90 and 99% of all the deforestation in the tropics. Most of this deforestation is driven by a handful of commodities such as soybeans, beef, palm oil, and timber. The problem is that these commodities are mostly produced in tropical regions and then are shipped to many consumer markets around the world. So how can we identify how markets, companies, and investors worldwide are exposed to this deforestation and related GHG emissions? This is exactly why TRACE was developed. We map the supply chain of agriculture commodities, linking consumer countries and traders back to places of production. By mapping the trade and financing forest risk commodities, we enable leading companies, finance institutions, and governments to improve the sustainability of their supply chains and investments. We help to strengthen accountability and monitor progress against sustainability goals. So let's take a look how TRACE can actually help companies. TRACE identifies hotspots of deforestation risk for key commodities, combining different data sets, including customs and shipping data and supplier data. TRACE maps commodities and links them back to more specific locations within the countries where they are produced. This is then combined with mapping of areas of recent deforestation. The problem is that supply chains are extremely complex, but our mapping system helps to identify hotspots so a company can identify priority areas for further actions to assess and mitigate their exposure to deforestation. We also developed Trace Finance for finance institutions. It builds on the supply chain mapping with information about financial flows, so it becomes clear who owns shares in or lends funds to companies involved in the production of forest risk commodities. StoreBrand, for example, is an asset manager with ambitions to have an investment portfolio that does not contribute to deforestation by 2025. To work towards a deforestation-free portfolio, StoreBrand has been using Global Canopy's Forest 500 data alongside Trace. The Forest 500 identifies and ranks the most influential companies and finance institutions in forest risk commodities supply chains. This allows StoreBrand to identify 40 investee companies who are not doing enough on deforestation. Then, Trace can identify exposure to deforestation as measured in hectares of deforestation in specific localities. Such specific data enables investors to rank and compare companies across geographies and commodities. This information is then used to engage or for shareholder action that can drive real change and help target specific aspects of governance and commodity sourcing. And then there is governments. Trace supports national governments to help them understand their deforestation exposure. This year, for example, we worked with Germany's International Development Agency to assess Germany's overall exposure to tropical and subtropical deforestation via its trade and consumption of imported agricultural commodities and products. The findings showed that Germany's direct imports between 2016 and 2018 were linked to over 58,000 hectares of deforestation. Just to give an idea of size, it's an area two-thirds the size of Berlin. But that figure is dwarfed when assessing Germany's total estimated consumption, including imports via other countries, which may turn commodities into processed goods. It's more than twice as large, at 138,000 hectares of deforestation. The data can also drill down further. Over 60% of the Germany exposure to deforestation associated with soy imports directly from Brazil between 2016 and 18 came from only 3 municipalities in the Mato Piba region in Brazil: Formosa do Rio Preto, Alto Parnaíba, and Uruçuí. Governments, companies, and financial institutions have all made pledges to halt and reverse deforestation. We believe that Trace data can help to make that possible. Trace has mapped so far over 60% of global trade in forest risk commodities, making it the world's most comprehensive open access database on this trade. We will continue to bring new levels of transparency to supply chain links to deforestation. Armed with this knowledge, we can drive real change on the ground.
The finance sector is key. It has the power to drive the change we need. According to our Forest 500 research, just 150 financial institutions provide more than $7.1 trillion in finance to the companies most exposed to deforestation. Think of what could happen if that $7.1 trillion became part of the solution. We've also created step-by-step guidance, a finance sector roadmap that shows financial institutions how to become deforestation-free by 2025. Here's my colleague Emma Thompson detailing the 6 steps to deforestation-free portfolios.
The finance sector roadmap is a how-to guide for financial institutions, showing them the path towards eliminating commodity-driven deforestation, conversion, and associated human rights abuses from their portfolios. We know that there is no way to net zero, no path to limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees without ending deforestation. That's been made clear by the world's leading climate scientists at the IPCC, and the timeline is short. Commodity-driven land clearance and deforestation must be halted by 2025. and financial institutions are key to driving that change. Our annual Forest 500 data looks at the 150 financial institutions that provide the most finance to the companies with the greatest exposure to deforestation risk through their supply chains. Those 150 financial institutions provide more than $7.1 trillion in finance to those 350 companies. That's $7.1 trillion at risk of financing deforestation. 2/3 of the financial institutions we assess as part of the Forest 500 do not have a deforestation policy covering their investments. That's just not good enough. Financial institutions are uniquely placed to drive change. Their money should not be being used by companies to drive deforestation or nature loss. Instead, by actively engaging the clients or holdings they finance, financial institutions can influence them to shift their practices on the ground towards becoming free from deforestation and the associated human rights abuses and towards becoming nature positive. The finance sector roadmap shows them how. The roadmap gives practical guidance to help financial institutions eliminate commodity-driven deforestation, the conversion of land for another purpose, and crucially, the human rights abuses that are associated with those practices, like violence and threats against forest, land, and human rights defenders, and the displacement of Indigenous peoples and local communities. The roadmap assumes no knowledge, and it takes the user from understanding what deforestation is to being able to actively eliminate it from their portfolios by 2025. Created in consultation with financial institutions and NGOs, the roadmap is designed to be scalable and to meet the bank, the asset manager, the financial institution where they are on the journey. And now here is the roadmap. It's in 5 phases, and then there's going above and beyond. Phase 1 is mapping exposure. A financial institution has to understand the risks posed by deforestation, conversion, and the associated human rights abuses, and then assess their exposure to those risks. So that means understanding which clients or holdings are producing, processing, procuring, or financing forest risk commodities from high-risk regions, and identifying clients or holdings who might be exposed to deforestation risk or impacts. Phase 2 is setting a policy and managing risk. A fundamental step in successfully eliminating deforestation, conversion, and associated human rights abuses from a portfolio is setting a strong deforestation policy. This policy then has to be communicated to clients and holdings along with a clear threshold that's been set for engagement. Phase 3 is monitoring and engagement. It's about engaging with those clients or holdings that have the highest risk. Annual monitoring processes followed by engagement with those who aren't doing enough or where instances of deforestation or human rights abuse have been identified on the ground. But there must also be engagement with other financial institutions, sharing knowledge and collaborating to engage ESG data providers on the need for better data, and also advocating for strong due diligence legislation for companies, but also legislation for the financial institutions themselves. Then phase 4 is all about disclosure. Greater transparency enables financial institutions to eliminate commodity-driven deforestation, conversion, and human rights abuses from their portfolios by 2025. Disclosure can be done through pre-existing reporting frameworks and sustainability reports, as well as other existing mechanisms. And then on to phase 5, eliminating deforestation. This is an ongoing phase. It should be continuous and comes in 3 key steps. First, continue engagement. Second, continue publishing those annual progress reports, continue that disclosure. And third, redirecting financing away from clients or holdings which are making too little progress. The last step is one of the last things that financial institutions can do to address their exposure to these risks and impacts if engagement hasn't worked. The power of most financial institutions is really in the leverage that their financing provides and their ability to engage clients or holdings. Engagement is absolutely fundamental in eliminating commodity-driven deforestation, conversion, and the associated human rights abuses by 2025. And then it's about going above and beyond. Responsible financial institutions are nature and people positive. This phase is about increasing nature and people positive financing, but ensuring that due diligence is conducted on these investments, these activities and projects, and ensuring that they too are compliant with the financing policy, that the free, prior and informed consent of Indigenous peoples and local communities has been secured. The crucial thing about the finance sector roadmap is that it's scalable. Each step offers guidance to achieving best practice for the sector. We need a livable planet, and we need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And that means we need urgent and effective action from financial institutions on deforestation to get there. If you want more information, please head to the website at guidance.globalcanopy.org/roadmap. And there you'll find the roadmap, but also sector-specific guidance for pension funds. And we're also putting together a common investment mandate for family offices and foundations. So watch this space.
We need more financial institutions to join this commitment for deforestation-free portfolios by 2025. The weight of the finance sector can be transformative. Jose Pugas is the head of ESG and a partner at JGP Asset Management in Brazil.
Brazil is one of the most privileged places in the world for the global transition to a green economy. But if you want to occupy the protagonist on the next century economy, we need to start fighting deforestation now. And not only that, we have to make a decision to become one of the first large global economies to achieve carbon neutrality. But let me tell you a secret, it's not hard for us. And we don't even have to wait for 2050. The reason why is that we already host over 30% of all the remaining tropical rainforests in the world and 15% of all the biodiversity. There is no net zero world without a net zero Brazil, and there's no net zero Brazil if we don't eradicate our deforestation. At JGP, we understand that, and we decided to take an action on tackling deforestation because we know that the Brazilian competitiveness resides on our capability to deliver to the world the possibility of keep the 1.5 degrees target. But it's hard. Even if the world's largest economies were not able to face alone the global challenge of the climate change, imagine Brazil that holds less than 4% of all the global financial assets. That's a major inequality. So we need allies. We need the support for the global financial institutions. We need a vote of confidence from the global financial sector that is possible for us to transform Brazil in an economic powerhouse for the decade of restoration and for all the other decades to come. Brazil was one of the last places on earth to abolish slavery. We cannot allow Brazil to be one of the last places in the world to abolish deforestation. The world depends on us.
Thank you for being with us in this session. The world is changing, and we too must change the way we understand, manage, and transform both our impacts and our dependence on nature. At Global Canopy, we've been working to change the systemic market forces destroying nature for 20 years. Going forward, we will continue to support those committed to change and shine a light on those still not doing enough. I've said already that forests are a precious gift. Urgently stopping deforestation is one of the great environmental no-brainers of our time. It lies at the very heart of dealing with the intertwined climate and nature crises that carry so much risk for humanity. It's time to reimagine our whole relationship to nature and to build a new kind of economy that makes the unseen seen and recognizes what really has value.